Okay, now let's talk about grinding your coffee. Excuse me if this is a little bit longer today, but the point of what I wanted to get into this is to make sure you have all the information to hopefully upgrade, if you need to, your coffee type, how you handle it, how you brew it, how you grind it. Okay, what you're looking at here are what they call burr grinders, and they kind of, one goes on top of the other and they spin. Other methods don't do a good job of, when you dial in a certain grind setting, the burr grinders work very well. And the better the burr grinders work better. So if you're going to get a grinder, get one that has burr grinding devices in them. Now, the good news is, as you see, it isn't where you go, oh, I don't have the money to spend on a big, expensive, coffee grinder. I have had these and I've given them away at times. The hand cranking is fine. It has the burr grinders inside, and you adjust so that whatever grind size is what you can do. And, this is certainly, unless you're, a unbelievable need for, toys, I guess you might say, a hand grinder is fine. Now, the one thing I need to stress over and over again, do not buy in the supermarket or anywhere else beans that have already been ground, because the minute you grind a coffee bean, it starts to lose some of its properties. Because really, if you think about it, when you turn a bean into powder, there's a lot more surface area, and air and oxygen is a real problem for coffee beans. And I'll get into some other things that you need to do, even if you do grind, of how you take care of them. Now, here's this is a Ciedo. And again, if I mention any of these names, it's not that I'm trying to sell anything, but I've had these grinders and they're extremely reliable. And when you dial in a grind size for whatever coffee you're going to do, and we'll get into all the types of coffees, this is a burr grinder, and you can control on the top whatever, fine, not as fine, coarse, and we'll show you some examples of that. But these really crank fast and you're ready to roll. Okay, this is what you would see with a fine grind, and there's just different variations of this. And when we get to these two types, you'll find which size grind of the bean you should actually do. This would be considered a larger, coarse grind. And again, there's so much in between, and you really have to, and that's why if you get a good grinder, you'll get used to the size grind that you should put out to do the best for what you're trying to brew. So you must match the grind size to your brewing time. And again, I know a lot of this, don't worry, you won't be tested, but I'm just trying to make sure that you kind of get an idea as to all the things that you can do. Now, for example, if it's too fine, if your grind is too fine for your brew, let's say example, espresso grind in a French press, the water will extract too much, resulting in bitter, harsh, and over-extracted cup. If it's too coarse, it basically, the water will pass through too quickly, resulting in a sour, weak, and under-extracted cup. So, again, this is where you really have to, and the fun part of it is, you learn, you test, you try, and you'll come up with the best combination of coffee grind size, and how you brew it. Anyway, the general guide, extra coarse. So if you have extra coarse coffee, and again, this you might say, well, I this is what I wanted. It's best for cold brew. Now, cold brew is not where, and I'll talk about the difference, but cold brew is where you have a very coarse grind, and you put it in, there's so many different devices, but you put in the coffee on the top, you put water, and it basically slowly extracts down into the lower portion of this device. And a lot of times it might even be where, you might set it up at night and you might have cold brew ready for the morning. Now, we will talk about the differences between cold brew and iced coffee. You might say, what's the difference? Well, we'll tell you. So now, if you have a little less coarse, but still coarse, it's good for what you're looking at as a French press. And again, what you do with that is you put the coffee, water, and you just keep pushing down, and it filters up and basically presses the coffee. And these are pretty good. I've not actually tried one. I've tried so many of them. Now we get down to what we call, if you've got a medium drip, coffee makers, this is a good drip coffee maker. Put the coffee at the top, a filter, and you let it filter down. Now, if you've got a fine grind or you want to do espresso, and, I've had quite a few different espresso machines, and how these work, and it really, again, gets into the grind size, but it pushes water through at a certain pressure. And you can vary the pressure a little bit, but typically it's what they call 9 bars. And again, you time it, and it's kind of fun. You put it on a scale, and you keep working at it to try to get the best combination to get a great espresso. Now, what's interesting on that is you might have one particular bean that you're using today, and tomorrow you have another bean and you want to do an espresso. You might have to test it first, testing the grind, testing what it comes out at, and so on and so forth. And the time and the weight, I mean, it's just, it's almost like you have to be a rocket scientist to get this, how would you say, perfect. But there's a lot of variation between good or not good, and the best. So you can experiment. It's kind of fun. I have scales, and I can go on and on and on. Now, if you want a Turkish coffee, you're going to use this Turkey coffee brewer, and it's going to be very, very fine coffee. So again, you have to know how you're going to brew it to dial in the correct coffee bean grinding size. Now, this is extremely interesting and important. By the way, the When you do have coffee beans and you roast them, these are roasted. Now, what happens is, for about 3 days after roasting, there's nitrogen gas in the beans. And accordingly, you want to get a container, and I have a bunch of these of different types, large, small. You want a container that has what we call a one-way valve. The one-way valve has it where the nitrogen escapes out into the air. Oxygen or air does not get in. So after about 3 or 4 days of rest, after roasting, and you put them in this type of device, they're not expensive, it is time to enjoy the coffee. Now, speaking about, and this is one of my big pet peeves, when you go into anywhere to buy coffee, and if you buy it directly from a coffee, roastery, they will typically, if they are doing it correctly, and I would expect they will, their coffee will have a date roasted on it. So if you're buying it, let's say this is saying it was roasted on August 12th, you will say, okay, and it will go in and should be in a bag that also has a one-way valve. So, when it's being ready for sale, it's able to give off the nitrogen with the one-way valve in the bag itself without letting any air in because it's sealed other than that one-way valve. So you want to go, okay, this coffee was, roasted on the 12th. It probably has to rest until about the 14th, 15th, somewhere in that range. And then you can open it up and either, just use what you're going to use and put it back in the bag and seal, or you use one of the devices containers that I showed you. And that's what I typically do. When I open up the bag, I put it in there, take out what I need, and close it right up. Now, what you will see, and this is, in my opinion, a real disservice to the coffee business, is where they might have, for best results, brew before some date in the future. No, that is wrong. Because one, you don't know when it was brewed, and they put brew before this date, or best if brewed before this date. I don't want to say it's trickery, but it's trickery, where you don't know when it was roasted, and you don't know how long it's been in that bag. And, if they say July 25th, 2026, they might have roasted it, who knows how long ago. So make sure you buy coffee, and it isn't where you're going to spend more money technically, but you want to see when the coffee was roasted. And when I was doing my coffee roasting, I had, a stamp, and it was very accurate. At stickers, I would stamp roasted on this particular date. And really, if you have it for too long, it probably is where either you're going to end up giving it away or using it yourself, because, again, it's not fair to the customer. Okay, so we've gotten through that. So specialty coffee typically will have the roasted on date instead of the expiration date. And that expiration date is, how would you say, arbitrary? They don't know. If they say, I brewed it today, and I'm going to put a date on the bag that's now sealed that use it before 3-4 months from now. No. It all gets, it depends on where it is, how it was transported, too many variables. And I don't want to say dishonesty, but I'm going to say dishonesty as to you not knowing whether it's old coffee or not old coffee. And when you get into these, and I admit in my coffee career, my first coffee maker was a Keurig. Nothing wrong with Keurig, but you're putting these coffee pods, and the coffee in the pod has been ground. And who knows when it was ground. And they put it in this little, pouch or whatever, and you don't know how long it's been sitting in a warehouse before it went to a store, before it was bought. So definitely some real red flags. Now, fresh agricultural product whose flavor degrades over time, it doesn't expire in food safety sense for a very long time, but its quality and flavor and peak will also decline. And the coffee flavor, it's best brewed between 3 and 4 days after its roasted date. And it's good, and I don't mean after 2 weeks it's bad. It's just it has lost some of its best qualities. And we showed the process of making sure that your beans, when they're roasted, it has a way of having the one-way system that can basically let out that nitrogen. After a few weeks, by the way, if you just keep your coffee, it causes the volatile aromatic compounds to break down, resulting in a flat, woody, or stale taste. So again, if you find that it's tasting as described, sad to say, it doesn't mean you can't use it. It doesn't mean that it's going to hurt you, but you're not going to get the best coffee. That's just the way it is. Now, so that's why it's so important to follow the date and ensure you know when it was roasted. Okay, what does sour and bitter mean? Question. I hear baristas talk about coffee being under-extracted, over-extracted. How can I taste the difference? Answer. Extraction is the process of dissolving coffee solubles into water. The goal is a balanced extraction, which is typically between 18 to 22% of the coffee mass. Under extraction, it will be sour. This happens when not enough flavor has been pulled from the coffee, the brew time might be too short, the water too cool, or the grind too coarse. I think you get from this, it's very, important to make sure you do it right. And you'll get good at it. And it isn't where that if it isn't good, you can't drink it. No, but you learn and keep making things better for the next time. The dominant taste is a sharp, unpleasant sourness, like an unripe fruit, because the acids are extracted first. The coffee will also taste weak and lack any natural sweetness. Now, if the bitter, it happens when too much flavor has been pulled from the coffee, including undesirable compounds. The brew time might be too long, the water too hot, or the grind too fine. Now, I know some of you say, hey, I want that Keurig with the little pods. And again, what I found when that was my first coffee maker is the Keurigs brew at too low a temperature. The best brewing temperatures are 195 degrees to 205 degrees. Keurigs are about 190, give or take 187. And that's mainly because, and that's why it's good just not to use these if you can. I'm sorry, I'm trying to pick on Keurig, but that's, not standard brewing temperature. But they do that because if they go into that 195 to 205 range, and this is creepy, the plastic pod that the coffee's in can actually melt a little. So that's going right into your coffee. So you're drinking brewed coffee with some, some of the plastic. Scary. So anyway, that's the choice. So, okay, now we're getting close to the end, and thank you very much for being here. Water for coffee. Does it really matter? Now, again, this is third wave water. Again, I'm not selling it. I use it. And there aren't a lot of, how would you say, different products that are in this category. But the question is, does the water matter? Do I really need special water for my coffee, or is tap water fine? So the answer to that is yes, it matters. So, I know all I've gone through is it's where you're saying, I don't know if I should even get into this because there's so many variables. But it's fun. And you become, over time, a master brewer, master grinder. And the coffee tastes better. And then maybe you say, I want to go into the business. By the way, I can always help people. That's what I like to do. Anyway, yes, the type of water does matter immensely. Your brewed coffee, and this is a point that you need to think of, is over 98%. So its mineral content has a huge impact on flavor. Now, distilled or soft water lacks the minerals like magnesium, calcium needed to bond with the extract the flavorful compounds in the coffee. This results in a flat, dull, and uninteresting cup. That's a good way to describe it. Hard water contains too many minerals. This can lead to over-extraction, creating a chalky or bitter taste. It also causes scale buildup in your brewing equipment. So what you're seeing here is where you buy these, and they're not expensive. Now, my water here, because I'm on well water, and I have what they call reverse osmosis, which the good news is it comes out as very clean, bacteria-free water, but you've lost most of the mineral content. So even though the water is good from the point of view of safety, it's terrible for coffee brewing. So these, and you can get different sizes and whether you're going to, what type of water, and I have a gallon jug I use. This basically will put into the water you just took out of the reverse osmosis tap in the sink, kitchen sink, to bring up the mineral content to ensure you have a good tasting coffee if everything else is fine. So it's got to have a balanced mineral content. According to the Specialty Coffee Association, and they have some really big rules, the SCA, the target is a total dissolved solids, again, don't worry too much about this, TDS level of around 150 parts per million. For most people, using a simple carbon filter like a Brita pitcher is a huge step up from plain tap water. Now, cold brew versus iced coffee. You might think, what's the difference? There is a big difference. The difference, cold brew and iced coffee. While both are served cold, they are made using fundamentally different methods. The result is a very different taste profile. Iced coffee, this is coffee that is brewed hot using a standard method like a drip machine, and that's what you're looking at, and then cooled down, often by pouring it directly over ice. Theoretically, yes, you will end up having iced coffee. But if you think about it, it's hot. You put it over ice, and if the ice didn't melt, that'd be fine because it would make it cold. But the ice melts. So guess what it does? It dilutes the coffee. So somebody says, oh, yeah, iced coffee and cold brew is the same thing. It's not. It's not. So get that right out of your head. Okay, the hot brewing extracts the same compounds as a regular cup, including the more volatile acids. So, the best way, if you want cold coffee and I'm actually drinking that now myself. But again, I'm not doing anything with ice. Now, cold brew is made by steeping coarse grounds in a cold or room temperature water for a long period, 12 to 24 hours. Time replaces heat in the extraction process because it's never heated. Far fewer of acidic and bitter compounds are extracted from the beans. The result, cold brew is naturally sweeter, much smoother, and significantly less acidic than iced coffee. And really, the equipment that if you want to make cold brew, I had one that, again, it was a glass, I would put my coffee and water, and good water, and I would let it work all night. Admittedly, they have times to say, you can do this and that, and it will speed up the process. Just have it where these devices are so inexpensive, it doesn't mean you say, I got to wait to have coffee. No, you don't. Just prepare, a container of what's been processed as cold brew. And before you run out of that, you have done it again. Okay, now let's talk about, and I know this is a bit long, and I apologize. It's about the longest I've ever done, but light versus dark roast. Which has more caffeine? Question, what has more caffeine, a light roast or a dark roast coffee? Answer, this is a classic trick question. The answer depends on how you measure the coffee, the roasting process. It burns off some of the bean mass and caffeine, but it also causes the bean to expand. If you measure by scoops, volume, a scoop of light roast coffee will be slightly more caffeine. This is because the beans are denser and haven't expanded as much, so more bean mass fits into the scoop. And I know you're saying, oh, come on, Jim, you're getting a little carried away here. But bottom line, I always like to tell the truth. If you measure by weight, a gram of dark roast coffee will slightly have more caffeine. This is because as a bean roasts, it loses mass water weight faster than it loses caffeine. To get 15 grams of dark roast, you need more individual beans than you would for 15 grams of a light roast, if you kind of get the logic here. In practical terms, the difference is very small and likely unnoticeable for the average coffee drinker. The choice between light and dark roast should be based on your flavor preference, not the caffeine content. If you're saying, well, the coffee I make and I love, I don't feel the caffeine hit, have a second cup of coffee. I mean, somebody would say, well, gee, should I fly to the moon? No, just have another cup of coffee. It's really that simple. So, anyway,